Hi and welcome to session 6 of RAW training. So we are nearly at the end. So this session is going to provide an overview of how to embed the RAW response in a whole school approach. So when we're talking about whole school approaches, what do we actually mean? So this quote here by Asha Patel is a really useful way of considering a whole school approach. So a whole school approach to mental health is a culture that is built upon empathy, relationships and evidence-based practice. These practices are embedded within the curriculum, policies and procedures across the school. They are inclusive and flexible to support and respond to the school's community's mental health needs. So it's really talking about that consistent approach that runs across the school, and particularly having that ethos where everybody's using similar language and there's a similar, consistent whole school approach to mental health. So right back in session 1, we talked about the RAW approach as being a whole school approach, and we thought about how it had come about. So back in Liverpool, the feedback was that schools had a genuine commitment to mental health. Another positive was that pupils had the access to talk to somebody they trusted, which was great. And schools practically look for support and utilise all the opportunities and develop partnership working. What wasn't working so well is, again, that stigma that we've discussed throughout in terms of what mental health means, and mental health being considered along the same lines as a mental illness. And it was still not a subject that pupils felt comfortable talking about. There was a lack of clarity around whose role mental health is, and hopefully throughout this training that you've seen now that everybody's responsible for mental health. We all have mental health, and within a school setting, it's all of our responsibility and our role. There was a lack of promotion of mental health and well-being in settings, and there was a lack of communication between parents and carers, which again RAW tries to address by thinking about parental mental distress in the previous presentation you will have seen, and also having a parental session to introduce an overview of what RAW is and how that's been embedded within school. So this slide here reflects, it's almost like a resilience wheel that's been created in Liverpool by Liverpool CAMS, to have a think about particularly leadership and management that supports and promotes emotional mental health and well-being in staff, in children and young people, and in families. So I'll just give you a moment just to read around some of these things. So you can see on the outside of the wheel the core strands, which is resilience building, participation in co-production, training, parent support, designated mental health lead and senior leadership team development, CAMS pathway, mental health promotion. And then in the inner part of the wheel are the factors which helps to promote these aspects. I'll just give you a moment to read over these. And this slide reflects Liverpool's approach, whole school approach to mental health. So the aim of the model that we've just looked at is to bring education and health together, which is something I think we're looking really closely at in Bradford as well, and that we're hoping to do too. They were hoping to build internal capacity so school can support individuals in a setting. So again, rather than seeing mental health as something that we need to refer on to, it's about building capacity, building skills, knowledge, experience, training, to make sure that school staff feel that they have the capacity to be able to manage some of these things that are cropping up. They also wanted to form a culture around mental health that penetrates through everything. So mental health practices cannot be done in isolation. So it's not always about pulling a particular student out and doing some one-to-one work with them around emotions and mental health, although that could be part of it. But it's a culture, again, that filtrates throughout the entire whole school. And again, often coming top down, but having that ethos where mental health is everybody's business, and there are things that we can all do to promote this. Another aim was to integrate mental health into the systems and into the curriculum as well, so that became, in a lot of Liverpool schools, I believe, a foundation of the curriculum, having mental health running through everything. They wanted to support schools to develop mechanisms that can measure the impact. So they wanted to look at what is the impact of these processes such as RAW that we're putting in place to support mental health. And the aim was also to support a nurturing, inclusive, relationship-focused, empathic culture to set values and expectations, which leads to a sustainable approach. So So it's also important to consider the impact of not having a whole school approach. What would this mean for the school? So there would be an impact on staff and pupil wellbeing, particularly I'm thinking if staff members felt that some people were having responsibility for a lot of, for example, the raw training that we're embedding, and other staff members didn't take that on. Similar with pupils as well, if they weren't all having a consistent input and active involvement in terms of whole school approaches. It would mean that one or two staff members are left with the responsibility of mental health, which can feel very isolating and quite a lot of responsibility as well. So being able to share the responsibility and us all having a role in mental health is really helpful in terms of the whole school approach. Mental health would then remain in isolation as well. It would feel more of a standalone concept rather than something that we are dealing with day in, day out, and that filtrates through the curriculum, through all aspects of school life. Mental health wouldn't be embedded, as we just said, into all the systems and areas of the curriculum. And it wouldn't feel sustainable because there's not that change in school culture, which we do need for anything in terms of whole school approaches. There needs to be a change in the culture and being able to promote and sustain that level of importance on mental health and that type of focus that we need. So probably the most helpful thing that I can show you is a video of how the school implemented RAW as a whole school approach in Liverpool. It's quite a long video, it's about 10 minutes long, so I will just play this now, but if for whatever reason the technology fails on me, if you just type in RAW response into YouTube, this is one of the top videos that comes up. So I will try and play this now for you.
You can count on me like 1, 2, 3, I'll be there. 'Cause I know when I need it, I can count on you like 4, 3, 2, you'll be there. 'Cause that's what friends are supposed to do, oh yeah.
There's always a reason for challenging behaviour. We need to give the children the language and the skills in order to be able to deal with this. Children won't get this naturally. It's like reading or writing, it needs to be taught. It's another skill set that we need to help them to develop.
You can count on me like 1, 2, 3, I'll be there. 'Cause I know when I need it, I can count on you like 4, 3, 2, you'll be there. 'Cause that's what friends are supposed to do, oh yeah.
It's important to help children to build up resilience. We know that by doing this, it will help them overcome any mental health difficulties and help them as they move throughout life.
We talk about physical health all the time, don't we? Oh, miss, I've got a sore leg, or I've fallen over and I've hurt my knee. But quite often, we don't talk about our mental health. And everybody has mental health. Sometimes we might feel joyful, sometimes we feel excited, sometimes we might feel angry, and that's okay. It's okay to feel all of those different emotions and those feelings. What I'd like you to do now is turn to your friend and to tell your friend where you are on the raw rainbow today. Thank you. Show me on your fingers where you are on the raw rainbow today. I can see lots of 10s, that's brilliant. I can see some 2s, again, that's fine. We don't always feel 10 on the rainbow. We don't, and that's perfectly normal. It's okay to be a 2, as long as we know what to do to help ourselves to feel better. What does it mean to be resilient? Jersey?
Resilience helps you get back up even if you've struggled.
Fantastic. Go on.
It doesn't help us once, it helps us thousands of times.
Perfect. So resilience, it doesn't just help us once, it helps us thousands of times to keep on going.
Since we've been on the raw training, it's completely embedded throughout school. We've taken on as a whole school approach. So that means we've trained teachers, LSAs, dinner ladies.
You been okay today? You in the choir? Oh, brilliant. Are you okay today? Yeah, we have Nonny. Is your brother all right today?
The RAW programme is a way of wellbeing. It's a way to communicate your needs and have your needs met.
We've held workshops with parents so that it's for the whole community now, so that it's completely embedded throughout the whole school and it's becoming an intrinsic part of school life.
And put your names on your post-it notes and your number on your RAW rainbow. Okay, Cece, and what number are you?
An 8.
An 8 today? Oh, give me 5. Well done.
What we've done is we've got on our lanyards, we've got the raw rainbows have been printed onto cards. So even as the children come in of a morning, the admin team might ask them, how are you feeling today? You know, they might be a little bit late. Is everything okay? So it's that common language that we've given to the whole team.
Is it okay? How come you're late?
I haven't had the best morning.
Haven't you? No. Oh, how are you feeling on the rainbow today?
About 6.
Oh, come on, sweetheart, let's go.
We sent the RAW rainbow home and a flyer giving the parents a rundown basically on what the RAW programme is, and we keep repeatedly doing that to keep them informed and up to date, and anybody new who comes to our school as part of the induction, we let them know about how we practice RAW here.
Through our understanding of adverse childhood experiences, we use that trauma-informed practice now to recognise that all behaviours, whether they're challenging or whether they're low-level behaviours, it could be children who are withdrawn in class or displaying just different behaviour than is normal for that child, and for us to recognise that and to act accordingly.
Mrs. Marsden.
Good morning, Bella.
Good morning, Mrs. Mars.
And what score are you today?
7.
Do we need to have a little chat?
Yes, please.
Good morning, Elise.
Good morning, Mrs. Marsden.
And what score are you today on the rainbow?
10.
Lovely. Good morning, Sophia.
Today, we still don't think of children as getting stressed in school or having mental health difficulties, but they do. So I think it's us recognising that and giving them coping strategies, giving them the language and skills that they need to be enable to help them deal with these problems, and also using Resilient Ralph as a role model. So all of those fun things that we can bring in on a daily basis.
This is Ralph, and he makes people be resilient and happy. You can express your feelings with Ralph, and you can, if you're down, you can easily get back up again. If you're upset, sometimes speaking to people helps you.
In the morning, Miss asks us what we are on the raw rainbow.
If you're a 1, you're upset, and if you're a 10, you're very happy.
If we're below 10, she asks us, do we need a chat? If we say yes, she takes us out for a chat.
Some days I'm sad and I feel so alone. I worry and cry about fears unknown, and I can't find the words to express what's inside, so I smile instead, and my sorrows I hide. These blues are just pressing like storms in the night. In the morning I know I'll be happy and bright, though today I feel trapped like there's no place to run. Tomorrow I'll laugh with my friends in the sun.
We've discovered that children can now understand what anger is, they understand what happiness is, they understand what sadness, and they can relate to it. So through that vocabulary, then they can communicate their needs more, and they can also support each other in the RAW programme.
We all know about our famous rocket group, don't we? You've all seen those famous blue hoodies outside. It's our group of children who've been trained up to look after their friends at playtime. The staff are still there to help you. But if you see that blue hoodie and you've just had a little bit of a fallout with your friend, or you don't understand the rules of the game that you're playing, go and have a chat. So for those of you who can't remember what ROCKET stands for.
R, resilience. O, open. C, caring. K, kind.
E, empathy.
T, togetherness. Rocket.
It's important to help children to build up their skills, to help them get the best out of school experience, and as they move on to high school and even beyond.
As a nurture team, we use this room daily. It's used for lunch club, so we have creative activities coming on here every day. Children come along, but it's really interesting because we could have a games activity, or we could be making Play-Doh, which is a therapeutic activity, and you'll just hear someone say to somebody, oh, I'm a 3 on the rainbow today, and you'll see that child go, oh, well, why are you a 3? And then this head will go up and they're just sort of nodding at you as if to say, come on, help, come on over here and talk. And they'll bring children in off the yard and say, miss, this child's really sad today, or they're hungry, can you help them?
Well, how are we feeling on the raw rainbow? A 2. Why are you feeling a 2?
There's no one more playing.
Well, I've got no one to play with, so do you want to come play with me? Yeah. Come on then.
It's improved relationships across school. Children who sometimes might not get along, we will remind them about the rules around. and then it gives them that voice. I think sometimes as well they're more tolerant. They realise that different things are going on in people's lives. People have a range of emotions and feelings on a day-to-day basis, and it just helps us to take that step back, children and adults alike, and to be able to be there to be a supportive friend.
It's a way to identify what our children need and what support we need to put in place. We have a number of services in school. We practice a programme called SAP, which is a Students Assistant Programme, which is about sharing and listening. Children are often referred to that once they've used the RAW programme and they know that something else is needed there. They can come to SAP. We have counsellors that come into school. We have the Seedlings programme. We have school family support and all the services that we use. And there's a lot of services. They all know about the RAW Rainbow and how we use it effectively.
You can count on me like 1, 2, 3, I'll be there. 'Cause I know when I need it, I can count on you like 4, 3, 2, you'll be there. 'Cause that's what friends are supposed to do, oh yeah.
Okay, so I think that video can demonstrate far better than I can how to implement RAW as a whole school approach. You can see how it's been embedded through things like assemblies, through peer support approaches, in the classroom by staff, by lunchtime staff as well, which I think is really powerful, through parent liaison and newsletters. So it is just a lovely joined up approach that they're using in this particular school, and hopefully will provide you with some ideas of how it could possibly be used in your school as well. So this slide is sometimes just used with senior leadership teams, but I think it's useful for all staff just to be aware of some of these questions that we could be asking ourselves, just to make sure that we're embedding something like RAW as a whole school approach really thoroughly. So having to think about whether senior leadership team or other professionals or staff within school have had mental health training. I mean, through the RAW training that you've had and through, certainly for Wellington, having emotion coaching training, that's really helpful in terms of having that joined up, consistent approach. Have the governors had mental health training? Would it be worth distributing this training to school governors? Is there a mental health agenda for senior leadership teams or governors? Is there a school mental health lead, so for example, accessing the Mental Health Champions project? Is the time and resources there for the whole school development? How does mental health feed into the school improvement plan? And then how does what your school is doing, how does that feed into the wider mental health agenda across Bradford? This is something that the Senko at Wellington and I have discussed briefly, but how do we measure the impact as well of the systems that you're putting into place? So what's the impact of the RAW training, of emotion coaching, for example? And we are looking particularly closely at things like teacher wellbeing, pupil resilience, and also thinking about parental measures as well. So what systems does your school have to track and monitor changing behaviours? Are there any screenings or targeting whole year groups, for example, to identify any unmet mental health needs? What are the systems in place for that? And hopefully we're targeting this next one as we speak. So school using recognised whole school system to approach emotional wellbeing, such as RAW or restorative practices, or for example, emotion coaching. What recognised outcome measures are being used to record and monitor mental health and wellbeing? So it could be the SDQ, so the Strengths and Difficulties questionnaire. It could be things like the Boxall profile. There's plenty of things that can be there, but it's just important that we are reviewing the impact all the time and monitoring how things are going. Making sure that safeguarding systems are thorough and in place, so making sure that school has a system for recording and monitoring children and young people's disclosures. And then making sure, and again, this is not just for the mental health lead, but for everybody really, that support's given to staff when dealing with complex or emotionally demanding cases. We're very fortunate in our role that we get regular supervision, but for you in school, you're on the ground all the time and you don't always get those opportunities. So what systems are in place for staff support? And again, this is something that we're going to be thinking about or already have thought about, depending on when you watch the video, very closely in Wellington in terms of policy development as well. So, for example, behaviour policies, do they reflect mental health? Does it reflect sort of relationships that you'll be having and the impact of that, and nurture systems on children and young people and their mental health and well-being? So again, thinking about behaviour as a form of communication and the iceberg model where we're only seeing the surface, but there's all the rest of this going on. How do your policies tackle some of those things? So these are just really useful things just to prompt us in terms of our thinking about mental health and how to embed this at a whole school level. So if I was coming in person and training on this, we'd be doing this as quite a long group activity really. So we'd be looking at the wheel that Liverpool CAMS have produced. Each group would have taken a section of each strand and have a think about what school's already doing really well, what more needs to be done in your school, and then sharing ideas and good practice really across staff members. So this may be a useful exercise to do at a team meeting. What you could do again is just go back to the previous slide in the presentation which shows the entire wheel and maybe just pick a strand or a couple of strands that you're particularly interested in and just jot a few notes down in terms of what school's already doing really well, what needs to be done, and then think about how maybe those ideas can be shared in a wider forum. Okay, and we're really nearly at the end of the raw training, so you've done amazingly well to stick with it because it's quite a long set of training and this all being delivered virtually and pre-recorded is not ideal, so thank you so much for sticking with this. It's important to say as well that particularly for Wellington, I'll be allocated to the school until July 2021, so I will help to support the embedding of this at a whole school level as well. So again, if I do get a chance to be in school, please do feel free to approach me and ask any questions, and I'll provide my email address as well so you can get in touch with me at any time. So before you log off the training and have a well-deserved rest, I just want you to have a think about what your next steps might be following the training. So maybe think about in the next 24 hours, what's the first step that you could put in place? And then maybe think about a few weeks down the line, what would you want to be doing when you're back in school and trying to set RAW up? So just maybe have a quick think about some next steps. And that's it, we've come to the very end. Unfortunately, there's no Katy Perry to play us out on this one, but if you again just want to have a look at the RAW steps, so R, recognising signs and symptoms, O, asking open questions and trying to spot the big thoughts, A, accessing support, services and self-care, and R, building resilience. And that's it. So I'd be really curious and I'd really love to hear how you've embedded RAW within your school as well. And as I said, please do feel free to contact me. And thank you so much for listening to this.